Welcome back, Richard.
Thank you.
So in the United States, there are only something like 2,500 to 3,000 or so active embalmers. That's what you told me when I interviewed you last time, Richard. And I think you're the most famous one in the United States. You're likely the only one that people know. I mean, not many people know embalmers, but that has changed in the last years because people know Richard Hirschman. I certainly do. Never knew an embalmer before. And there's a good reason why you are so famous, because you were one of the very few embalmers in America who, and not just in America, but also worldwide, who have spoken publicly about what they found in bodies after the, starting in late spring 2021, after the mRNA rollout of the COVID shots. That's now 5 years ago, by the way, long time, 5 years. All
Yep.
right. So before I'll ask you some more specific questions, I want you to imagine the following. It's late spring 2021, and you are in the midst of embalming someone. And lo and behold, you just pulled out another one, a really long one, of these rubbery white stringy things, these structures, these, as they are now called, white clots, although they aren't really clots, they're like long spaghetti structures. It's scary. You don't know what it is. If you've pulled out a few, you've never seen them before in your life, and you are an experienced embalmer with a lot of years under your belt, it's hard for you to even believe your own eyes that you're finding such a thing in people's bodies. You wonder if other embalmers are finding similar things. And at that moment, someone from the year 2026 enters the embalming room and says to you, Richard, 5 years from today, embalmers in America will still be pulling these white structures from people's bodies. 5 years from today, nobody in the US government will have truly and fully acknowledged that they exist. No publicly funded research teams have been put together in the US or elsewhere to find out what they consist of, what causes them, why they appeared shortly after the mass injection campaign with mRNA shots, and what can be done to get rid of them once they have formed in people's blood. And before this mysterious visitor disappears, he asks you, do you believe me? So, well, what do you say? Would you have believed him?
Would I believe that nobody would be looking at this? I would find it difficult to believe that nobody would be looking into it. But with what I know there are people looking into it, though most people will not know it because it's not being publicly discussed. I'll give you an example. I had a meeting with one of the instructors at the college where I went to school. And he informed me that shortly after I came out, which was in January of 2022, so it would have been probably, February or March or whatever, he was contacted by the FDA concerning me, instructor of mine when I was in mortuary school.
Oh, he was a college instructor when you went to school. He was an instructor, and he was approached by the FDA when exactly was he approached?
He said it was not long after I became publicly known speaking out. So he didn't remember the exact date, but he said they had gotten a phone call from the FDA asking questions about myself. Wanted to know if I was a legit person, if I was, and of course, I also have had apprentices, and I have, we call it proctoring students that are in mortuary school that need to have cases where they're embalming. And I have been, I've taken new students to work with them on their clinicals and teach them how to actually physically do the embalming. And, he told them that, oh yeah, we know him. And of course he's, I've worked with him in the past, but not just, with him being my instructor when I was in mortuary school. But he told them that I also proctor some of their students that go through mortuary school. So, yeah, he let them know that I was a legit licensed funeral director and embalmer.
This is so interesting. So, and that was an embalming instructor, I take it, right? This person
Yes,
that the FDA contacted to find out who is
if I was real.
behind, yeah, whether you are real. So,
Yes.
and so that must have been shortly, if you said you were contacted by him in February, March or so, then it must have been very shortly after you posted about you posted your first pictures, correct?
Well, the way it came out with me publicly coming out was when I was introduced to Lieutenant Colonel Teresa Long, who was a DoD whistleblower, and I shared with her the images, and she was the one that put me in contact with Dr. Jane Ruby, and Dr. Jane Ruby did the first interview that I ever had exposing these strange clots to the world. Um, it was shortly after that interview, I was also contacted by PolitiFact, and PolitiFact did a hit piece on me back then. And they didn't speak to me directly, just a couple of email messages. They didn't waste no time writing this hit piece, basically saying that my story is mostly false. And the reason why they had to say mostly false is because they contacted somebody in New Zealand who was seeing them, somebody in the UK who was seeing, which I believe was John O'Looney. They contacted the National Funeral Directors Association, and the only statement they gave when they in the email that I got was they talked to the PR person for the National Funeral Directors Association and was told that they're seeing an increase in clotting in both the vaccinated and the unvaccinated, which is, I'm sorry, that's a CYA, cover your rear end answer. And then they got a hold of some embalmer in Arizona saying, "Oh, the long clots are found because of long-term storage in coolers. Like if a body's sitting in a cooler for long term." Which, of course, I realized that's a crock of garbage too, because I've been an embalmer by that time. I'd been in the business for 20 years, and I've embalmed hundreds of bodies that have been in long-term storage and never seen these strange anomalies. But the thing is I was seeing these anomalies in people that were never put in cold storage. So that's not true. But they claimed the story to be mostly false. So PolitiFact, the FDA was, I didn't know that the FDA contacted him until a couple of years later when I was talking with him. He was down, my former instructor, he was down because he comes down to witness the student doing the embalming while I'm in the embalming room with him to verify that this student is capable of doing an embalming procedure. And so he does that as part of their protocol to make sure that their students are learning what they are supposed to be learning. And that's when I had that conversation with him.
So, very likely, so the FDA called up your instructor,
Or
verified
the college where I went to school and spoke with
yeah, the college, and then maybe ask the college, who knows whom they should talk to find out, find out some background facts about you, and then talk to your instructor, and then the FDA probably soon after, I would assume, called or decided to have a piece in PolitiFact.
Well,
In
I don't know if
PolitiFact.
the FDA, I don't know this, I believe the PolitiFact happened, I'm sure, before the FDA contacted my previous instructor. PolitiFact happened right away. I mean, it was like right away. I mean, we're talking within a week or two at the most after me speaking out, they had a hit piece on me.
Oh, interesting. Oh, interesting. So you think that might have been even before they talked to your instructor?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay.
I don't know that for a fact, but I know that I'm pretty certain of it, the way it happened, because they were very quick on trying to discredit me.
Yeah, would be interesting
Very
to find out. But anyway, so that's super interesting. So the FDA was on your case, and they realized, oh my God, this is a big threat. We have to debunk this guy. We have to silence, him
well,
as much as we.
th- but Cornelia, they never called me. They never contacted me, the source of the person and the person that's talking about this.
Yeah, of course.
Isn't it interesting? They go to find out if I'm a legit person, but they don't call me or come to talk to me about it.
Well, because, that wasn't the purpose. The purpose was to silence you. You don't call up the people you want to silence, do you? No, you never do that. I mean,
Well, I mean, if they're wanting to do some true investigation, you would think they would obviously want to contact me directly and for me to show them exactly what it is I'm talking about. And maybe even provide them some more evidence of what I was seeing. Because at that time, I wasn't keeping any samples. I was just taking some pictures of the weird stuff.
yeah. But that was clearly the opposite of what they really wanted to do, right? They didn't want a real investigation. That was the last thing they wanted. So of course they didn't call you.
Right.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
A lot of people don't know that.
I interviewed you for the first time in March of 2025, so it's about 14 months ago. And that's a long time. It seems almost like an eternity. When we talked first, there's absolutely no interest in the United States and also in other countries. I don't know of a single country that has done an official analysis of these clots or has assembled a governmental team to look into this. Not a single one. Before we talk about this, I just want to get my bearings here and find out what has changed since I interviewed you. Are you finding fewer of these white clots in people you embalm?
There are times it does seem like I'm finding smaller anomalies. And sometimes it seems like the numbers of strange clots are going down. But a lot of times when I say this to people, I end up having cases again that this is a recent one,
Oh,
you
wow.
know. Um, that's recent. Again, you see a lot of red, but it's the white stuff that's familiar. And so every time when I think it's all going away, they start coming right back. You know, that's another one from this month.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
So it's not going away. My work has slowed down tremendously. I'm not nearly as busy as I used to. Is it because there's fewer people dying? I can't say that's the answer. I do know that cremation rates are up. And when people go with direct cremation, typically there is no embalming. So when I look at the numbers on my spreadsheet, I'm still seeing these, maybe not quite 50% right now, but probably still 40%. And again, I haven't calculated them in a minute. So, but it's still pretty prevalent, even if they're not these really big ones like these. I mean, these are pretty large. One is 19 inches long, and the other one is over a foot long. They're not always like this large. A lot of times they're smaller, like this, but it's still the white abnormal looking clot. And in the images, you see some of them look a little pinkish. They're a little bit red. And all that is they just came out of blood. So sometimes blood sticks to it. And when you put these in the formalin, the blood dissolves off of it and it becomes pretty crystal clear.
So you just said that that there are way fewer embalmings that you do now compared to 14 months ago, and you don't really know why that is. So that's interesting. I mean, do you think it's fewer embalmers than, let's say, before COVID?
No, probably not less than prior to the COVID pandemic. But less than it was a year ago and the year before that. It does seem like it's gradually decreasing the number of embalmings. But I think the reason, my personal belief is, and again, if the death rate is staying the same, which I'm not a statistician. I don't know. All I know is what's in front of me. I do know that the increase in cremation is going up because I hear about it. A lot of the funeral homes, they don't make as much money when they're doing cremations as they do when they do full services. Um, the reason why I think that is number one, it was a trend. Slowly over time, cremation rates have been slowly rising. But then when we had the pandemic, there were a lot of places that weren't doing full services. They wanted to minimize it. Like here in our state, they were supposed to have only like 6 people, or was it maybe 10 people at the funeral? Well, that excludes a lot of people. You mean there's families that have more than 10 people in it, especially when you add cousins and nieces and nephews and brother-in-laws and sister-in-laws. And so during that time, and I know it didn't last for that long here in Alabama, but during that time, a lot of people were kind of pushed into having no service because how do you tell certain family members they can't come to the funeral? So they either went with what we call a direct burial, which is, we get the body, then we basically take care of the body, get it dressed, no embalming, put it in the casket, put it in the ground with hardly nobody there. Okay. The other option was if we can't have a full service, we'll just have a cremation, a direct cremation, and we'll hold our own private ceremony where the government can't tell us we can't show up at the barn or at the church or whatever. Well, they tried shutting down churches too then. So that kind of pushed things even further into basically bumping up the cremation rate up. And people got used to it. And if you had a loved one die during that time, let's say you had one of your parents died, you were not allowed to have a service. You ended up going with direct cremation. Now all of the stuff has been lifted. Well, ain't no point in having a full service for, because we couldn't do it for Pawpaw. Why can't we'll just do the same thing that we did the last time we were here. So that helped. That kind of pushes that cremation up. But I think the biggest reason is economics. It's just economics. Everything is getting more expensive. Slowly over time, it's just getting more and more expensive. And cremation is expensive too. It's not cheap. I'm in the business, and my mom died just this last December, and we had a traditional service with a cremation that follows. Now, I'm in the business, and I get a pretty good discount, okay, because I can do a lot of the work myself, and it's kind of a courtesy. I've been working with these people for a long time. But even then, it's still, in the end, was pretty close to, uh, what was it? About $10,000. And that's just for a service with a cremation. We see funerals nowadays, a traditional funeral can easily get up there around $15,000. Now, there are areas that can do it for less, and there are areas that will do it for more. But when you got gas prices that are $4 a gallon now, and you got food prices and energy prices and all these things that are going up, it just gets to become more and more difficult for people to come up with that kind of money to have a traditional funeral where you have a viewing and a full service with a casket and the outer burial container, the opening and closing of the grave, the marker. There's so much that goes into it. That's what gets the cost. Becomes more and more expensive. So people are going to cremation purely out of economics, I think.
Yeah. That makes sense. That makes total sense. How much does an embalming cost on top of, how much compared to a cremation? How much more expensive is it?
Well, you have to look at it in the big picture. The embalming, I've seen some funeral homes, they'll charge somewhere around $800-900 for the embalming, and I've seen some funeral homes that are charging around $1,500 for the embalming. But if you have a direct cremation, I know of some places, and these places are pretty small. They don't have very much to offer. and therefore they can do it cheaper. And sometimes I've seen them as low as around, $1,200 to $1,500, but I've seen it go up as high as close to $5,000 just for a cremation with no services at all.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so you said that you still see a considerable number, like about 40%. So if
Yeah, and it might
40%
be a
of the
little
people
more.
you embalm, or even more, you still keep your spreadsheet, right? Where you
I
tabulate.
I do. I have it. I keep a log in my car, and then after a while I come in and I start putting it in on my computer. Um, and I don't go every month and look over the whole numbers and write it down. I was doing that for a while, but you know,
Well, it would be
it,
interesting to know.
sometimes it seems like nobody
I
cares,
do
and
care
so
very much.
why I keep on going?
No, I would love to know. But so you think it's about 40%, maybe even more. So that's not a big difference. I know when I interviewed you last time, you said it
It's-
was something like 50%,
yeah,
like half.
yeah.
And now you say, well, you are embalming fewer people, but the ratio, the percentage is well, maybe slightly down, maybe not even, because you haven't really looked at it and calculated it. So maybe it is slightly down to 40%. And you also said that you haven't found these really, really long ones. Like, what did you say? 90 inches?
19,
Okay. Oh,
19.
90,
That
90
one
inches.
that's
Okay.
it's like the length of my arm,
Well, that's,
I mean,
yes, very long. Okay.
and this one is not as big, but still, you look at this. Let me set myself back here.
Yes.
You're going from my elbow, to my hand.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. That's a long one for
it's a
sure.
little bit, it's smaller. It's not super huge. But that's way bigger than it's supposed to be.
Yes. And also the smaller one that you just showed me, they are thick. They are small. They are not as long, but they are about the same thickness, it seems to me. Is that correct?
Yes, but the thing is, it's just the same type of material.
Yeah.
It's not about the necessarily the size. And just for your listeners, people need to remember, I am not a doctor and I'm not a pathologist. Okay. I'm simply a mortician, an embalmer. I embalm bodies. And I can't say that these clots that I'm finding is the cause of death. I can't say it killed the person. My concern is 20 years of embalming, I never seen these types of clots. And then in early 2021, um, I began noticing these white fibrous looking structures, a cast almost like of the vessel. My concern is, without this substance in their body, would they have lived longer, healthier? I can't even totally answer that question because, again, I'm not a pathologist. All I am is an mortician who's seeing something, raising my hand, saying something's wrong over here. Something's highly unusual. And, I dealt with this issue, which is one of the things that is so concerning. I've been accused of being unethical. Um, Things that happen in the embalming room supposed to stay in the embalming room. We shouldn't be taking pictures. We shouldn't be exposing what we're seeing. I was taught that in my beginning mortuary school. It doesn't matter. I mean, and I understand it. So there is an ethical thing to try to keep things private. Things that necessarily happen in the embalming room are not necessarily supposed to be broadcast around the world. Okay. Even though you can go on YouTube right now and type in embalming procedure and you can watch other morticians doing embalming on YouTube. But I'm unethical because I'm showing these things. Okay. Now, if this concern of mine, which we now know because we've had a lot of analysis done, if this new anomaly is affecting humanity, and my concern is this affecting the health of people, the population? And I'd see something that looks highly abnormal and I say nothing. Is that not unethical? I'm sorry, but I believe it's the ethical thing to do is to stand up and go against the norm of keeping everything quiet and saying, wait a minute, hey, something's wrong here. We need to pay attention. Something's causing this. And in the very, very beginning, I didn't 100% know what it was. I didn't know. I argued with some doctors, there's no way that these things could be just simple postmortem clots, because if they were, I would be familiar with postmortem. I've dealt with clots in the past 20 years, my first 20 years. This is abnormal. And when a person dies, they go to the funeral home. Is the doctor ever going to see what the blood looked like in the individual? Nope. Very few people are actually autopsied. Are pathologists seeing this? I know they are, because I had an autopsy tech tell me. He was pointing them out. And the pathologists were just trying to say these are just normal postmortem clots or chicken fat clots. And there was nothing we had to back up saying that it's not or whatever, but we do now. We know what this material is, and they're not chicken fat clots. But this ethic thing, people want to accuse me and calling me, how dare I say these things? How dare I expose this stuff? Did I get the family's permission on this? Did I do that? Listen, to remain silent when you see something that is really, really potentially harming humanity and you might have a chance to do something about it. If you do nothing, isn't that unethical?
Yes. I mean, clearly, this whole thing about you being unethical is just another tactic to shut you up, to remove you as a threat. That's all it is, clearly, because of course, it's not unethical. You're not showing me the long claw and telling me, oh, this was from Mr. John, Mr. John Smith, and tell me all his life and whatever. Well, that would be unethical. Of course, you can't do that. But this is completely anonymous. We don't know where these clots are coming from, and they are of utmost interest for the public to know what is going on. And so this is just a completely ridiculous argument, in my opinion. Um, Also, that wasn't the first thing you did. Look, you found them, we don't even have to talk about it, but you found the first clots like more than half a year before you posted your first picture on X or wherever you posted it.
Oh,
You
yeah.
didn't just say, oh, wow, there's this interesting thing. Let me post this right away. Actually, something you should have done would have been great, right? To not have like 6, 7 months in between. But of course you didn't do that because
No, I didn't.
because you didn't know you didn't know, is this some sort of a fluke, or I'm never going to see that again in the next 30 years. You just didn't know. So you just don't go immediately, at least most people wouldn't immediately shout into the world, look what I found. That would be weird. So you waited and you talked to other
Waited.
people, you talked to the funeral directors and colleagues uh, and to your doctor and tried to figure out what's going on, you know?
Yeah.
Um,
The progression, Cornelia, was when I first started seeing this, the first time I saw it, I thought, wow, that's weird. Never seen anything like that. I just looked at it as like, hey, there's some things that we see that we don't, that are different. I didn't think nothing of it. I just moved along and continued my work. But as that time progressed, by the summer, I was beginning to see this more and more. And then I started going, wait a minute, this is weird. And it wasn't until September of 21 when I took my first picture. And then when I had 3 pictures on my phone, 3 different bodies, and I had a doctor's appointment. I asked my doctor, "Can you look at these strange things? Can you tell me what is this?" And he was so fascinated, he called in one of his colleagues, another doctor, to come in and look at these fascinating pictures I had on my phone. Well, in October, whatever, of course, I was asking other embalmers how often and that's one of the questions they were asking me, how often am I seeing it? And I was like, I don't know, pretty often. I mean, I was seeing it quite a bit, but I wasn't keeping the number, so I didn't really know. So it was in November of 21 when I actually started documenting, the bodies that had the clots. And by January, I had about 30 images on my phone. Now, from sometime in September, towards the latter half of September, to January something, I had about 30 images from different people. Yeah. And that's when Lieutenant Colonel Teresa Long ended up getting to know one of the morticians, and he said, you need to speak with our embalmer, and put me and her in contact with each other. And I shared with her the images. And that's when she was like, oh my God, it explains a lot of things that they were seeing in military with soldiers having blood clots. And that was my concern, because remember in 2021, there was a lot of reports of people having blood clot issues. Well, when I was seeing reports of blood clot issues, I'm looking at these clots going, if we're talking about blood clots, if they're these, I can see why it's an issue, because these are not like your typical blood clot that I was familiar with.
So did Teresa Long tell you, or did she know if there were these white clots found in soldiers?
No, I don't think so. I don't think she knew that. She just knew that they had clots going down their arms, which is funny because that's the first first time I saw these white clots was in the arm of an individual. It was in the artery of an arm of an individual. Again, yeah, which is also the unusual thing is I'm finding these clots not just in veins, but I find them in arteries. And the only time I see it in the arteries, because we pump the fluid from the embalming machine, the tank goes into the artery, and then it pushes it throughout the body. The only time we do not drain blood out of the artery typically. That just isn't normally how we do things. So when I cut the artery to get ready to insert my tube, that's when I noticed the clot. I was like, see, I cut the artery and I was like, that looks weird. I take my forceps, which is like a tweezer, and I just simply grabbed a hold of it and pulled it out. And I'm like, wow, clots in an artery, unusual. And then I had some naysayers saying, oh, clots in arteries, that's so rare. Not that it doesn't ever happen, but it is extremely rare. People didn't believe it was happening. So I had to take a couple of videos of me removing them to prove that, yeah, it's right here.
Yeah, and I mean, blood clots in arteries, traditional blood clots are not in arteries, they're in veins. Correct?
Yeah, they can happen in arteries, but it's not very, it's
very
pretty
rare.
rare.
Yeah, so usually they are in
It
veins.
was.
Yeah. Yes. So now, when it comes, when I talked to you last time, you told me a lot about the traditional blood clots, so like the grape jelly and the chicken fat clots. And you said that not only did you find these new white structures, these new white clots, never seen before, but you also observed an increase in the traditional kind of blood clots.
Yes.
Is that still the case?
Yep. We see an addition, there's still a lot of clotting issues. And from everything that we understand through the research that's been going on, it makes sense. The spike protein can cause clots. I mean, there's papers on it that spike protein can induce abnormal thromboinflammation or whatever. It can become a clotting issue. There's doctors that are out there that have spoken a lot about it. Spike protein induces blood clots. So exposure to spike protein, whether you get the natural COVID-19 or COVID infection now, you're at a higher risk of getting blood clots. But if we can all agree that the spike protein causes clots, which there's plenty of papers on there now showing that it does, the my simple brain says if spike protein induces clotting issues, why are we injecting mRNA that makes the body create spike protein that causes clotting issues?
So usually when you embalm people, you do not know whether these people have received the mRNA COVID shots, the 2 basic shots, or maybe boosters on top of that, because, that's none of your business. You don't really talk about that.
Not anymore. There for a while they did in the beginning when I was asking the question and I got answers because everybody was proud to, and it wasn't a big deal to talk about it. And then I was getting, when they would come back with me, they would tell me, yeah, they were vaccinated, and I was almost 100% right. But I don't get to talk to the family, so I don't get to hear them directly. I only get to hear from the funeral director or, yeah, the staff at the funeral home.
So that's interesting. So you said that change, that people are not willing anymore to disclose whether they got. Is that what you meant?
Mhm. People say it's none of your business. People say it's none of your business, and why you asking me that question, even though they were the same people that didn't want you to come over to Thanksgiving if you didn't get your vaccine. It's funny how that works. I don't get it. Remember, you to go to some of the stores down here, you either had to they wanted you to wear a mask if you were not vaccinated.
Oh,
So if
yeah.
I didn't want to wear a mask and they want to question me, I have to show them my vaccine card showing I'm not vaccinated.
Yeah.
And nowadays they say it's none of your business. It's funny how this works. It's talk about bait and switch all day long, And what's sad is, I get it. There's a lot of people that don't want to admit that they got it. I meet so many people that wish they would have never gotten the vaccine. I haven't met anyone that says I wish I would have gotten the vaccine.
That's true. Yes, I haven't met this person either. I think it doesn't exist.
Well, it's exactly. I don't. I mean, I find it hard. I mean, it might be rare. There might be somebody out there that wishes they would have gotten it, but I haven't met any of them. Most of the people that I meet, very, very few say, "Oh yeah, of course I got the shot, and I'm going to go get the next one. I'm glad I got it." I'm not saying that those people don't exist. They're out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're out.
Okay. So then the answer to my question of whether families are more open to talking about it now is, I guess, no. It's just the opposite.
I wish more families would ask the morticians. I had a call from a doctor. So when I first spoke out, I got invited to some private groups, um, like concerned doctors for COVID ethics. They wanted to talk to me, so I talked to them. There were people in there like Dr. Arnie Burkhart, Dr. Sukrit Bhakti, and a lot of these other people. I don't know all these people, but there was a lot of doctors. They had all kinds of different doctors on there. But then I had also was asked to speak to a group of doctors on I don't remember what, I think it was on a Signal group where we did this thing, and they were asking me questions about what I'm seeing and blah blah blah. But these were concerned doctors. These are doctors that they knew something wasn't right early, very very early. They knew something wasn't right, and when I spoke up about what I was seeing, they were wanting to know more information about it. But again, you got to remember, if they're not a pathologist that are actually, looking for these things, they're not going to see it. They're not going to know it's there. And most doctors do not see their patients after they're dead. They don't do the embalming. Nobody does the embalmers do the embalming. So if an embalmer is seeing something that potentially is seriously affecting humanity, do we not have an obligation to say something? I think we do. And I have been saying things, but we know that they know. You talked about earlier about people not investigating this. Well, we have this. You remember in this little preprint that was here, SARS-CoV-2 spike protein induces abnormal inflammatory blood clots. I'm sorry, that was dated October 13th, 2021. Okay, 2021. Here's another one, June 8th of 2021. June 8th, 2021. Vaccine induced thrombotic thrombocytopenia. And COVID-19 vaccines, what cardiovascular clinicians need to know. And that was from the American College of Cardiology. June 8th of 2021, roughly 6 months after the rollout of the vaccine, they were knowing it was causing thrombotic issues, which is nothing more than blood clotting issues. There's another one from the New England Journal of Medicine. SARS-CoV-2 induced immune thrombotic thrombocytopenia, published April 16th of 2021, about the time I started noticing abnormal clots.
Wow, that's really early. April 2021.
April of 2021, they knew. You know, you put out this question to me earlier in this thing, and like I said, I had found out that the FDA was questioning a former instructor of mine about me without coming to me. They were asking him questions. Am I real? Well, I know there are people because I spoke with RFK Jr. in early, I would say probably late spring, early summer of 2022. You know, RFK Jr. Long before he ran for president, long before he became a member of the government right now. He knows all about this stuff. And I'm going to say this, I can't disclose names, but I had about an hour and a half meeting face to face with somebody from the CDC on this. They know about this issue.
When did you have that meeting with a person from the CDC?
This year.
Oh, this year. And it was
I don't want to get too technical because there's so much corruption and stuff. And I was told there are people in the government that are trying to stop this, but there's so much corruption and there's so many things that are going on up there that they stonewall and they make things very, very difficult. He said they knew there was issues long ago, but the previous administration was very, very hard, made it very difficult for anything to happen. So it is what it is.
You said that you don't know the vaccination status. You don't know whether people got the shots or not. But are there any cases where you know that a person, where you found these white structures, these white clots, that person was not vaccinated? Is there do you have a couple of cases like that?
Yes, I've had a couple of them that I know that they were not vaccinated. Typically, what I found was they had received some form of a blood product, like a blood transfusion. And I raised issues with that with people like Dr. Ryan Cole, and this was a long time ago. And he, of course, he realized the potential concern that he had for that. Kevin McCairn, he explains it very well. These clots we now know are amyloid. They're amyloid.
So misfolded proteins.
They're misfolded proteins. The majority of it is fibrinogen, misfolded fibrinogen, mostly beta chain, followed 9 parts beta chain from the analysis that we had done to 4 parts of gamma and 1 part alpha. When it's typical clotting should be 1 to 1 to 1, 1 part alpha, 1 part beta, 1 part gamma. This is like 9 parts beta, 4 parts gamma, 1 part alpha. Anyway, they've done Kevin McCairn, brilliant guy in Japan. I had sent him some of these clots. In the very beginning, he wasn't sure if I was legit either. But anyway, I did finally get him some clots, and he did some analysis. He did thioflavin T, which shows amyloid. He did Raman spectroscopy. Looks like our amyloid. He did RT quick. He did scanning electron microscope, which that was really interesting because on a scanning electron microscope, you can really see the amyloid, and the amyloid shows up as like little nodules Imagine a string, which is a great thing. I'll use this old cable here. Okay, so imagine fibrin comes together and the three chains, alpha, beta, gamma, create a strand. And what happens is a whole bunch of these strands, they kind of come together and you get a tangled up mess, right? Okay. You get this tangled up mess, and that basically acts as a patch. So if you're cut, this builds up on the cut and it helps stop the bleeding.
Right.
It's a natural healing process. Now, instead, what we see are these little twists, which then changes the shape. These little nodules. Now, I can't tighten this too tight, but imagine this thing were tight, like really, really tight. And you just started making a bunch of knots on here. That's misfolded. And the reason why it's twisted is because they didn't line up right and they're misfolded. It causes it to, instead of staying one nice smooth line, now you've got this nodule on the fibrin, on the fibrin.
Yeah. Yeah. Which
That's what's going
makes sense because the ratio is completely messed up between these, what is the alpha, beta, and gamma chains, right? It's just totally out of whack. So no wonder it's
9 to 4 to 1, 9 to 4,
9 to 4 to 1. So totally messed up.
Totally messed up. It's aberrant. When you hear the word aberrant phosphorylation or aberrant this, it's just out of whack. It's just messed up. It's just like people are concerned, like amyloid. Well, what's amyloid? Oh, it's just a misfolded protein. And that sounds pretty benign, doesn't it?
No.
Well, I mean, for the average person that's out there, if your listeners are listening to this and you don't know what amyloid is, you just got to look up what is amyloid. What are the concerns of amyloid? And then you'll find out if you have amyloidosis, it's not a good thing.
No, it's like Alzheimer's, for example, right? That's a form of amyloidosis.
Yep.
Yeah. So, I mean, in nature, when there are spontaneous misfoldings of proteins, and of course that happens all the time, it's almost always to the detriment of the living organism. It's not like some improved version where you say, oh, great, this is a wonderfully misfolded protein and gives me all these advantages. No. That is extremely rare. It's usually something really bad, and something has gone wrong, and the result is that the mechanism, whatever, is destroyed. It's very easy because everything fits together so finely, and it's so finely calibrated that even if you have just a misfolded protein, it can wreak havoc in the whole mechanism of the cell or wherever.
Like imagine these are proteins of the alpha, beta, gamma. Basically what happens is these proteins, they come to link together to create a chain, a nice little rope. Okay.
Mhm.
And then you have enzymes that come in later on and they devour this and they break it up into small pieces so they can get rid of it, which is normal. Which this is just a paper clip. Everybody knows how to put a paper clip, holds paper together. Well, guess what? This is a paper clip too, but I bent it out of shape. They're both paper clips, but one of them doesn't work.
Definitely not.
And then what happens is you get all these bent up paper clips and they start to come together and to create a tangled mess
that you cannot untangle.
That becomes very difficult to untangle. I'm not saying it won't totally, but your body has a hard time doing it because everything in your body works like a lock and key. You have proteins and then you have enzymes that help break proteins down. It's just how our body regenerates new blood cells. The blood cell destroys. You have enzymes that come in. It cleans things up. You have fibrinogen, which creates blood clots, because if you get a cut like I got one on my face, if you didn't have fibrinogen, it would just keep bleeding. That fibrinogen has to, it comes together to create a clot so that it stops bleeding. Yes, you have to have it. But when you have bleeding that's within your body going on, like if you got a nice bruise, that you got a bruise because you're bleeding underneath your skin. But that blood has to go away and the blood has to be stopped. Otherwise it starts to swell up, right? You see somebody with a big old knot on their head or a black eye, it swells up. But once that bleeding stops and the swelling goes down, the body takes care of that. The body then has to absorb that extra fibrin that was there for the patch and dissolve it and make it go away so that you can get back to normal. It's just a normal thing. But what we have is, and I was speaking with a gentleman. His name is Greg Harrison, great researcher, become a very good friend, and I know you're going to be speaking with him in about 2 weeks. And I recommend anybody that's listening to this, you need to listen to Greg because he has a far better understanding. What we think we got happening here is a new form of amyloidosis of the blood, the systemic amyloidosis of the blood. And what happens is all these amyloids could be in the body, and something happens where these amyloids begin to commingle or tangle up together. The blood slows down where these things start meshing together. I don't know if they're 100% if they're antemortem or postmortem. I personally believe they are both antemortem and postmortem. And I say that because of testimonies of people that have had them removed, white clots, while the person was still alive. You can't have postmortem clots from a living person. Doesn't work that way. Postmortem clots are happening after a person dies, which postmortem clotting is a thing we in this industry are very familiar with. They're normal red looking jelly-like clots. It happens after the blood settles and it's no longer moving, keeping it agitated. But I know that these clots are forming both ante-mortem and post-mortem. But whatever it is that's happening, we know that the analysis has shown. Kevin McCarran has done the analysis, shown that these are amyloid. They're amyloids. And he's testing people's blood and finding amyloid microclots. Risa Pretorius and Dr. Kell and Dr. Jordan Vaughn. There are other doctors that are doing amyloid staining on people's blood and finding amyloid microclots. And these little microclots floating around in the body, what happens when you get too many of them?
Yes,
Because the body
yes.
can't fit.
And I wanted to ask you about that because when I interviewed you last time, you said that you observed an increase in microclots. You call it coffee grounds. It looks like coffee grounds in the blood, right?
Well, yeah, that's what I think they are. Because I talked to a radiologist one time about it, and um, I described what looks like fine grain. I see them sometimes like coffee grounds, as big as like coffee grounds, or little.
Pretty big. But if you can see them with your
Yeah,
eye, they're already pretty big.
yes. But now imagine taking beach sand from like Florida. Okay, it's really fine. You ever been to Florida and feel their sand? It's really super soft. Now you sprinkle that out onto a table. You can still see it, but they're so small. You know it's there. You can feel it. You can see the residue. That's something that I've seen in the blood as well. The problem with those being the big issue is it's hard for people to understand that, to them, how would they know that that's normal or not? I can tell them it's not normal, but compared to a regular blood clot, yeah, it might look a little bit different, but typically they're still dark or red. But this, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to say, hey, you don't want that in your body.
So with these microclots, have you observed a decrease in microclots over the last 14 months?
Um, I still see it. I don't see it as much as I see this stuff.
Oh, really? So you see
But I
that
do see
you see that more often than microclots.
Yeah, I see more of this kind of
And
the
but when you pull out one of these white clots, do you always also find microclots in the same body?
usually when I find these kind of clots, I find a lot of jelly-like larger stringy clots with it, or what I call dirty blood. It just looks like a mess. I'll show you. I had one. Now this one that I have here. I mean this looks really rough. Okay. And there is white stuff in there, but it's not like quite the same.
Right.
But that's what I would call dirty blood.
Yeah, so these clots are
And
quite.
that's within the last week. So, I mean, this is recent. This is,
Wow. You showed me it's similar, a very similar picture when I talked to you first. Looked almost the same. So you
yeah.
see exactly the same 14 months later as well. Yeah, and with regard to what you said about postmortem and antemortem, of course it is known by now that apparently a lot of people, alive people who are alive, have these clots, these white structures pulled out of them. We know that there have been some whistleblowers. Tom Haviland, actually interviewed one or two of these whistleblowers. And there are also patients like Melanie Levelin who found one of these clots in her draining tube after surgery. It was growing. It was actually growing in her draining tube. It was getting pretty long.
Which tells me something. It tells me that these things are continuing to self-assemble in a way. Something's happening where when that in that drainage tube, those abnormal proteins, I don't know if it has something to do with temperature, the rate of flow that it's moving. I don't know the mechanism. All I know is if it's growing in that tube, then something is happening within that material that's causing them to come together. And I think it has to do with attractions. You know, you got a bunch of magnets, magnets are going to all start clinging together. You keep it separate. I like to look at it sometimes as the cement truck when it's going down the road. The cement truck is the barrel of the cement truck keeps turning in circles around like this. Why? Because as long as they keep it agitated, it's workable. Once they pour that into the foundation or out there on the sidewalk and it begins to settle and sit still, it turns into solid concrete. It's still concrete. It was concrete in the thing, but it was more on a liquid state. Then once it sits outside and once it stops moving and it fully polymerizes into the solid structure that it is going to become, you know, that's what I think is happening with some of these clots. That's why I think these clots are forming both antemortem and postmortem, because you can't pull clots out of postmortem clots out of living people. And we've had like Melanie having those clots out of the drainage tube. But I've also had two cases now where they were a part of, they had an ECMO device hooked up to them, which is a tube that goes into the neck or one of the large vessels, and it goes to a machine where it oxygenates the blood and then it pushes the blood back into the body. It kind of helps act as a way to oxygenate that blood to make that person better. Well, when the person died, they basically took, imagine these are tubes, and they put the tubes together to make it one solid tube. If they left them open, the blood would just run all over the place. So they disconnected it from the machine, plugged the two pieces together so they don't have a huge mess on their hand. Of course, there's going to be a little bit of blood that's going to spill out, but pop it together like this. And in that tube formed what looks to be like one of these white fibrous clots. Now, that could not have gotten into the tube that way because there's a screen on the end which would not allow a clot of that size to enter the tube. So the blood that was in that tube, which was not moving no more, it was right there, formed one of those white fibrous structures inside of that tube.
Oh, that's very interesting. So that formed after the blood came to a complete standstill because the person was dead and was just sitting in there, and then like concrete forms when it's not permanently moved, it formed. So that seems to suggest then that the slower your blood flow is, the more easily or these things start growing, I guess.
Potentially. I mean, again, I'm not the doctor. We're just thinking out loud and hypothesizing possibilities or why this might be happening.
But you know what's interesting when I think about Melanie, because she documented it so meticulously. She has all these pictures where she looked at her draining tube and this little white structure was forming, and then she took pictures, lots of pictures every day, and it started growing. It was just, there was not much. There was liquid going through the tube, but not very much. It wasn't like surrounded by liquid and being moved by it. It was just kind of sitting there. It was actually ideal for observing the growth of this thing, because it was a transparent draining tube. It's the ideal scenario, really. Absolutely fascinating. By the way, nobody's taking interest in her and her experience. I've been trying to alert doctors to this and have them interview her, and nothing, no interest. And it's so incredible to see these pictures and to hear her story. But anyway, this was just sitting, hanging, lying in this empty, more or less empty drainage tube, and growing, 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 growing.
Yeah.
And she's still alive, by the way. This, and she's doing well. So that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's look at some of the good thing here, okay? Kevin McCarran in Japan, and I can't remember what the other doctor he's working with. They have a protocol that they're actually helping people. Lindsay House, a vaccine injured registered nurse, was in really, really bad shape for a long, long time. And she's gone to Japan to have this double plasmapheresis, which basically a big tube comes out into the neck, pulls blood out, spins out the plasma. It's filtered. And because it's called double plasmapheresis, I'm assuming they're filtering it twice. And what they're doing is they're capturing the impurities, these microclots that he already knows exist, because he's analyzed the clots that I have, and he's analyzing people's blood. And he's finding the same amyloid stuff, except for the microclots are very small. You need a microscope to see it, just little teeny tiny micro clots. And it seems like what he's found is those who have more microclots have more difficult health issues. And so the fibrinogen, guess where it lies? The fibrinogen is in your plasma. It's in your serum of your body, in the plasma. It's a part of the liquid that's in there. So when these microclots are happening, I think it's in the serum. So filtering the serum makes sense to me as a layman, just somebody who's trying to think for themselves. By filtering the plasma of all these impurities and then putting the plasma back into the body, clean, minus the microclots, the amyloid microclots, gives the body a chance to heal itself. But then they're adding some kind of a stem cell therapy on top of that, which is hopefully helping to boost their body's ability to heal. Now, I follow Lindsay and a gentleman by the name of Rixie, and both of them have received this treatment, and both of them seem to be doing a lot better than they were before. They are, Lindsay was practically in a wheelchair. I believe she has had some serious issues, and she's now exercising, running, and so she's having a major turnaround.
How long ago was her treatment?
Just recent. I'd say within the last month or so.
Okay. Well, it will be interesting to see what happens, because long term, because the danger is, of course, that these microclots will start forming again, because the cause hasn't really been removed. Okay, so the blood has been filtered and it's now microclots free, but what happens long term when,
And that is a valid point, and I'm right with you. And I pray that they have great results. I know the body has an amazing way of trying to heal itself if you give it the opportunity. But if it's toxic, you got to remove the toxins to try to help kickstart that healing. And so if the body's not overwhelmed, maybe it will get better. But whether it works long term or not, it's a step in the right direction. He's identified Kevin McCarran has identified the amyloid. He's identified the amyloid in the microclots. He's identified the amyloid in these post-mortem clots that I have. Okay. So he's there. And if this plasmapheresis is working, it's a step in the right direction. That helps people like other doctors and researchers and scientists saying, let's stop looking at all these other things. Let's look what's going on in the plasma. What can we do to help the plasma become filtered or help what kind of medication can the individual be on that's going to help the plasma remove these particles? I had this thought. I had one of my daughters when she was little. Some kids really like medicine, like cough syrup, and some don't, right? Well, I had one of my daughters when she was pretty young, got a hold of the cough syrup, the prescription cough syrup bottle, and I don't know how much she drank. I mean, she got in there, something got in it, so she drank. Took her to the hospital, and you know what they get? You know what they give her? They give her charcoal, right?
Yes.
Why
Yes.
do they
To detoxifies the body.
detoxify the body? And so, what we need to do then is think on those lines. What can we give an individual that will help detoxify? Because the charcoal absorbs the toxins and help the body, and then the body passes the charcoal out. What can we do to give people that will help pull out the amyloid? If we can do that, then we could probably help a lot of people. But at least Kevin McCarran's work is getting people thinking in this direction, and he's having success. That's the most amazing thing, is he's having success.
So when you talk to this person from the CDC that interviewed you earlier this year for an hour,
Wasn't really an interview.
okay, well, talk to you for an hour and a half, so quite a long time. Did were they interested in, let's say,
Oh
what
yeah,
they were?
he was interested. He knew about this. They've known about it. There are people that are up there that know about this. He said to me an amazing thing. So I told him, I said, listen, I get it. There's people that are frustrated because there are a lot of people that wanted Bobby Kennedy up there because they wanted this vaccine taken off the market. And of course, there's a lot of blame pointing straight to the vaccines. I don't think it's totally 100% the vaccine. I think it has to do with the spike protein. But I said, we're winning this war because, you know, I don't meet anybody that wants to go and get the shot. And he said to me, he said, you know that 30 million Americans got the COVID shot last year?
Hmm. Yep.
And he's like, that's a lot of people. And I agree. 30 million people that got the
And a lot
shot.
of kids among them,
Yes, a lot of kids. And why aren't kids having quite as many of issues? I think I have the answer to that. But I said to him, I said, but think about that. They estimate over 350 million Americans, right? 30 million Americans that got a shot last year is less than 10% of the population. Who's winning this war? It ain't them.
Well, it takes an awful long time to win this war, and also,
Well,
and also, you see that, okay, so somebody from the CDC came to you to talk or to discuss, but these people are probably more or less doing this on their own. They certainly don't have the support of the really high, the top guys, at the federal agencies, at the CDC or FDA, NIH, whatever. So that in itself is extremely concerning, and it's the same in other countries, of course. And they also don't. None of them really has acknowledged nor is interested in solutions or in just doing research, which I find absolutely amazing, given that, let's say, Bhattacharya is head of NIH. I expected lots of things that didn't happen. But I certainly expected that there would be intense research going on into what causes these, for example, what causes these clots, what can be done to help people.
they're too busy. Um, if you think about it, you pile so much stuff on top of people. You have them doing this. You have them running left and right, left and right. They got this meeting, that meeting, this, that. They're so tied up in other things, and of course, there's politics involved too. You you make the person that you're working for upset. You get yourself fired. You get replaced. We'll put another person who's going to be a yes sir person, and it's a mess. The whole thing is a mess. And you know the frustration. I looked this up last night, okay? And this is from the CDC website. And what to know, it says the 2025-2026 COVID-19 vaccine recommendations were updated for people ages 6 months and older. They are now based on individual decision making, which emphasizes considering the benefits and risks of vaccination. So they're still recommending it for ages 6 months and older. Then it says COVID-19 vaccination offers greatest benefit if you are at high risk for severe illness, including if you are pregnant. Pregnancy increases your risk of becoming very sick from COVID-19. And it says if you get sick with COVID-19 during pregnancy, you are at increased risk of complications that can affect your health and the health of your baby. COVID-19 vaccination during pregnancy has not been linked to increased health risks for pregnant women or babies. It helps reduce the risk of severe illness from COVID. In my first 20 years of doing this, from 2001 till 2020, yes, we've seen occasional fetal demises and stuff like that come through. I swear, I have never seen so many fetal demises in the last few years than I saw in all of my 20 years combined. The number of fetal demises is through the roof. I don't care what the CDC's. How can they say that there's no link? I'm sorry, I don't buy it at all.
So the fetal demises, how has that changed over the last 14 months? Because you mentioned that when I
It's a
interviewed you.
lot.
So has that gone down somewhat, or is it about the same elevated number?
It is slowly going down, but it's still way too frequent. Way too frequent.
So how can you, like twice? Can you kind of
Okay.
quantify it?
I remember years ago, like in 2005 to, I want to say somewhere around 2008, 2009, I worked at a company where we did maybe 900 to 1,000 bodies a year. Okay. During my few years there, I probably couldn't count on one hand the number of babies that I would see
During the entire
during an entire year.
Okay.
And when we were doing, somewhere around 1,000 bodies. There is a funeral home that I do work for. I have seen three babies in the cooler at one time.
Wow.
And I'm not saying that I see it every single day, but I am no longer surprised when I see another baby in that cooler.
But what used to be exceptionally rare, extraordinarily rare, is now a pretty common occurrence. And it still is.
And it still is. And what's really sad is I listened to an interview that Glenn Beck was doing with a lady who was talking about there has been a decline in pregnancies, right?
Right.
A decline in pregnancies, not because of no COVID vaccine, right? But just because people just are opting out not to have children. Okay. So think about that for a second. If people are just choosing not to get pregnant anymore, and there's fewer people getting pregnant, why then am I not seeing fewer fetal demises than I did years ago?
Which you should. You should see almost none now that there are fewer pregnancies.
Especially when you look at the medical advancements they have had to try to keep babies alive.
Yeah, well, they are vaccinated. They're still pregnant women who get these shots. It's completely crazy. I know that in America, I mean, pregnant women here are super, or a lot of them at least, are super duper careful with all sorts of, I don't know, I think totally ridiculous things like You cannot take a bath when it's just a centigrade or 1 Fahrenheit over a certain temperature. I think that's all just totally hysterical in my opinion. I mean, I've been pregnant 3 times, and pregnant women can do a lot of things, but what should never happen is that a pregnant woman gets vaccinated, you know? You're not and never, ever should that happen, and it never happened before. Just 10 years, 20 years ago. That was unheard of. Pregnant women would not get vaccinated. Of course not, because it goes immediately into the unborn child. It's a no-brainer. But
They
and everybody
didn't want
knows that.
pregnant women to take a lot of medications because of their pregnancy. I mean, if a woman that was pregnant years ago got a cold, what'd they tell them? Don't take this, don't take that. You're just gonna have to suffer through it
Yeah,
because everything that
exactly.
you can take can cause harm to your baby. But then we come up with this experimental mRNA vaccine out of the blue with no studies, and then we tell them, "Oh, you got to have this because it's the safest thing since peanut butter." I mean, I'm sorry, none of this makes sense. None of it.
Do you ever you probably never embalm babies, or do you?
I have embalmed babies, you bet.
So have you ever found these white clots in babies?
I have found. Okay, so you got to understand. You know, an adult artery might be. There's they vary in size. Imagine how small the blood vessels are in a baby. They're really small. They're really, really small. Sometimes they're probably, you know, smaller than the thickness of that paperclip.
Yes. Yeah.
So it'd be really hard for me to pull out something that looks like a long white fibrous clot looking like this.
Yes.
Now,
Well, wouldn't even fit in there.
stringy clots, maybe. I have seen abnormalities, but I can't 100% say I've seen a lot of this white stuff. But is it because they're so small, And again, why bringing up the children, why I think there's not quite as many children having problems is because they're healthier than us adults. The older we get, the more fibrinogen we produce. It's just part of it. It's part of life. Um, Maybe the children are a lot more resilient to some of the stuff that's going on out there. So maybe there's a silver lining on that the kids won't be as affected. Maybe it's just, they won't have any side effects for years to come. I don't know. I don't know the answer 100% why the children aren't being totally affected, although a part of me wants to think that it's because children are generally just healthier and can overcome a lot more things. An adult with the flu is usually way worse than a child with the flu. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Maybe. Well, certainly they are affected when they are still in the womb. So, as we just discussed. And I mean, American children are not very healthy children. They have so many, they get all these vaccines they're getting starting on the first day of life, and so many chronic conditions, so many allergies, autoimmune disease, you name it, all sorts of things that they didn't used to have like 50 years ago, were unheard of. So I think American children are actually pretty sick. A lot of them have chronic diseases, a lot of
Yeah, it's amazing. I think RFK,
pre-diabetes.
yeah, Robert F. Kennedy was right. I mean, I've heard him say this before. For being one of the wealthiest nations on earth, we have all of these medical advancements. We're giving all of these vaccines to our kids. Why is it that American children seem to be less healthy than a lot of most of your other countries in the world? How is that possible? Something's not right. How can we be so medically advanced, have all these wonderful things, and yet be one of the sickest nations on the earth?
Now, Richard, you mentioned earlier that doctors obviously don't embalm people, and they don't see their patients when they're dead. But I was thinking it would be a really good idea if you would invite, I don't know if that ever happens, if embalmers invite doctors to come and witness an embalming, to see, because it's very, very interesting for them to see this if they're not pathologists, especially to show them these white structures, where you find them, what they look like. They can observe how you pull them out of the arteries or the veins. I think that would be highly, highly convincing and instructive, and they could then share that knowledge with their colleagues and others, write papers about it.
Well, that would be fine. One of the problems that we have is you got to be careful on who you allow into the embalming room. There's a lot of people that would sit there and say, no, they don't want to get involved. I have invited some doctors that they wanted to witness it, to be a part of it, they can. But usually their schedules are so busy. But when I have one, they're busy doing something else, and it's trying to get the timing to work out. It would be great. I'm 100% on board with what you're saying, and I agree with it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, if the timing is the only issue that stands in the way, then that's just a pretext, because that is
It is.
that's a solvable problem.
It is, and the other thing is so if I have one body to embalm, there's a 50-50 chance that they're not going to see the stuff that I'm concerned about. But if I've got 4 bodies and they're with me all day, then the odds are they're going to see it. They're going to see it in 1 or 2 of them. And I've had it where they would see it in all of them. But the funny thing is sometimes I'll go where 3, 4, 5 bodies in a row, I don't see it. And then all of a sudden I see a whole bunch. And then sometimes I do, sometimes I don't.
Yep, that's a risk. Well, but if they're really if they're really driven, if they really want to see this, then they're going to come back until they've seen it, and they won't have to wait too long if you have a 40% rate.
They wouldn't have to wait too long, except for, my work has slowed down quite a bit here in the last few months. Now, summertime, sometimes this business does slow down, but the clots are not gone. They're still there. The analysis is showing these are amyloid misfolded proteins. I believe it's related to the spike protein. The analysis is there are things that are leaning some of the researchers to say, hey, this looks like it has the fingerprint of spike protein. And so we just got to continue on with the next stage, which, of course they're wanting to dig deeper. But Kevin McCarran, I mean, God bless him for a lot of what he's doing. Greg Harrison, Tom Haviland. I'm gonna be going and meeting with Tom Haviland this weekend to go speak at the. He's going to be at the Tennessee Funeral Directors Association.
He went last year, right? And did his on-site survey asking embalmers. Actually, that brings me to a question that I want to ask you, namely your colleagues. You know lots of embalmers. You probably belong to the Alabama.
Nope.
You don't belong to it.
I have never became a part of their little clique.
Interesting. Why is
to
that?
me, it's all because it's all politics. It's all people, rubbing noses and who's who and this, that, and the other. And I'm working. I am not somebody that wants just to go up there and politic with all these people. I got a job to do, and I'm a worker.
So, well, what do they politic about as
Oh,
embalmers?
you know how, look, anytime you go to some of these conventions, they got sometimes a lot of the things that they have, the state or whatever will allow it to go into the book as a continuing education credit so that they can get their credits, so they get their license renewed. You have, people presenting different things. I'm not saying it's all bad, Cornelia. It is some really interesting things, but a lot of times people are just trying to sell something. You know what I'm saying? You might have somebody from Pierce Chemical Companies up there and do a presentation on their newest embalming fluid. and all they're doing is trying to get people to buy their product and all this. And it gets, and on one hand, it is, I suppose you can, if you like being a part of the big who's who in the funeral business world, then that's fine. If you want to be, aspire to be the president of the Funeral Directors Association for your state or Embalmers Association, and then by all means, you do what you want to do. But I'm I just I just like to do what I do. Sit in the back, do my job, um, make families happy. I don't need to make I'm just not that political. As this is all politics. I'm not a big fan of politics. I just am not.
Right, but you still know you have been in the business for a long time. You know lots of other embalmers. You speak, I'm sure you
Sure.
speak with your colleagues. So when you over the last year, when you talk to your colleagues, do they talk about the white clots that they are finding? Is that a? I mean, you told me that it never really people weren't very keen to talk about it. Has that changed?
A lot of people are not necessarily talking about it. I was just gonna try to. Um, I got this message from this embalmer. Wow, I still get them, and every time I see one, I think about you. LOL. Talking about the white
Yes,
fibrous
yes.
because he was an apprentice at one time. I knew him as an apprentice, and I get another one from an embalmer from uh, Michigan who he sends me a video of him pulling one of them out, and I can't share it because it shows a little too much of the individual, the deceased. And that he sent me that one. I don't hear from him very often, but he sent me that video in the middle of March. So yeah, I still get messages from other embalmers that are well aware.
Mhm.
They're awake.
Yes, so, you just mentioned Tom Haviland. He is this amazing guy who is, doing these embalmer surveys for the last 4 years, and he did the last one in, I think, December 2025. So he sends out surveys to funeral associations, lots of them, the biggest funeral associations in the United States, and also to some in England, in, I think, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. But most of his responses come from the United States, and he had quite a solid, like 300 responses or so. But this last survey had, to my great
Very good.
surprise, I did not expect that at all, had got very few responses, like 50 or something. It was a much
Yeah.
lower number.
I think it was like, yeah, somewhere in the 50s. I want to say it was like 59 responses, but it was not very much.
And yeah, why do you think that is? I mean, one thing is he sends them to the funeral associations, to the directors of the funeral associations, and asks them to pass the survey on to their hundreds of, I don't know, probably dozens or hundreds of members. And if they don't do that, then of course all these embalmers do not get to see the survey. So my question is, he always had a problem with that. He said most of these associations never passed on his survey. There were a few, like the Pennsylvania Funeral Association, they passed it on, then they stopped doing it the next year. Maybe they got some severe scolding from someone further up that they had done that, who knows. But this last year, I guess that's the reason that very few of these associations are passing on the survey. I cannot imagine that individual embalmers would say, nope, I'm not going to answer. It's anonymous survey. It's very short. There's 5 questions, very easy to answer. They would say, no, absolutely not. I refuse to do this. Was how do you see this?
I see this as a number of things. Number one, this is the new normal. Um, it's been talked about now for what is it, 4 years? 2022, I started speaking on it, and John O'Looney started speaking about his abnormal stuff that he was seeing as a funeral director in around September of 21. So he was outspoken a little bit about what he was seeing, just as a matter of observation on deaths and stuff like that. So on one hand, I think is people have become, this is the new normal. Another one is People don't want to talk about it. They got COVID fatigue. They don't want to deal with this. Nobody wants to talk about the vaccines no more. Nobody wants to talk about the unusual clots. Another one could be, I don't know about you, but I get a lot of spam calls, and sometimes I get these, especially during the political season, which we just had our elections here a couple weeks ago. It's getting all these surveys, that popping up on my phone to fill out this survey kind of thing. And I'll tell you honestly, I don't do those surveys. I just I may want to or intend to, but usually I don't. And one of the reasons why I don't do the surveys is because you ever fill out a survey and next thing you know, you're bombarded with junk emails?
Oh gosh, I never fill out these surveys. But I mean, this is different. This junk that pops up on your
I know you're right, it's different, but the problem is this, it's already in your mind. If you fill out a survey, next thing you know, you're gonna get bombarded with stuff. And even though he's kept this anonymous, the person who's looking or sees that survey, they don't know that.
Well, he tells them that, but they might not trust it. I mean, because
They don't trust
yeah.
it. And as far as it not being passed down, Tom has had some people will sit there and say, in his email, unless you're a accredited university or a government agency, we're not gonna participate kind of garbage. And this is the thing. We're down to just we don't you started it off at the beginning where why aren't big universities, big agencies, bigger things trying to get to the bottom of this? And I think it's two reasons. Number one, they don't want to. Well, why wouldn't they want to? Well, I don't want to get involved. We already seen what happens to doctors who stand up and speak early on in the pandemic. We see how they got destroyed, medical boards going after them. I don't want to become a part of that. I don't want to put my neck out there. Another one is they too bought into, which many people did. And I have listen, I'm not pointing fingers. I feel bad for the people that were coerced into getting a experimental vaccine and were threatened with their livelihood or their jobs. I don't blame them, but a lot of these associations and these big whatever, they encourage their members to go and do this same thing that the rest of the world lost its mind on. And for them to go ahead now and investigate this, and if they find out that there's a link between these things, they don't want mud on their face. They don't want to admit that, they encourage their people to go and get all of this stuff done. And now it looks like that was a big mistake. I'm sorry. You got myocarditis now? Oh, what a shame. It must have been a pre-existing condition because you sure can't get no money out of me over it. How are you going to prove this? You know what I'm saying? They don't want, this is why I think the government has been really quiet on this. But the problem is the government's supposed to be run by we the people. And if we demand it, eventually it's going to come around.
Yeah.
They'll have to fix it. But the government don't want to admit it's wrong. The government's not going to admit it's wrong. And to sit there and call out Fauci, which I don't like him either, to call out all these people, you start calling out names. You all you do is create enemies and you create division, all this other stuff. Call out the agency. Call it out for what it is. This, stop pushing the blame. On one hand, let's say, I know this is kind of a crude thing. Let's just say a child is being abused at home physically. We'll just say a child is being physically abused at home. Pointing fingers, this, that, and the other, and keeping that child there, and the abuse continues and continues and continues. Doesn't do nothing. All the kid wants is the abuse to stop. That's all they want. Most of the time, it's not even that they hate their mom or their dad. They just don't like getting hit. Can we just stop hitting each other? Can we just acknowledge that, hey, you know what? We're messed up. Let's fix this and let's get along. Let's stop beating each other up and let's stop the abuse. But today's world, that's not going to happen. I just don't feel like it's happening.
Yeah, well, it doesn't seem so. Well, the government is certainly not run by the people, and the people know that, right? Most people are very much aware of that. And that's probably one of the reasons why people are so,
Then we need to fix it.
I don't know, maybe they are,
You need to fix it.
yeah, well,
And
they
I'm
need to
not,
fix it, yes, but how do you
we need to fix it. How do we fix it?
how do you
How
fix
do we,
it? Um,
you stop complying.
yes,
And you put
exactly.
everybody in jail. How many times do people sit there? And I've had this conversation with people back when the mask thing was going on, and they knew the mask was stupid. And the person would sit there and say to me, he's like, well, we just all need to stop. We just all need to stand up and stop wearing the mask. I said, all right, let's do it. Oh, I'll do it when everybody else does it. Right back to square one. What do you mean? If nobody steps up and stops, we're not getting any traction. And how do we win? We just stop complying. They want to give everybody the vaccine, and people just say no. Oh, you're going to lose your job. Okay, all right, find somebody else. If enough people did that, the companies would have said, whoa, we can't continue to operate if we don't have employees, and all of our employees are walking off because they don't want to get an experimental shot in their arm.
So I want to ask you this, Richard. When you have been speaking out year after year now for 5 years about these white clots, and for you, I mean, for you personally, it must be absolutely infuriating and also kind of surreal to realize. I mean, you are doing the embalming, you're pulling out these things almost. I mean, you used to when you had all this embalming to do. When I talked to you 14 months ago, you were super busy. It was even difficult to find for you to find time to be interviewed. Uh, you would pull them out. You would live this reality with these white clots almost every single day. And now and then you would realize over the years there is simply no interest. There's simply no interest from the side of the government to find out what this is, to even acknowledge it, to say yes, this is a problem, and we caused it with our goddamn COVID shots, and now we have to fix it because it was all just part of the plan apparently. So nobody even acknowledged it up to today, high up in the federal government. That is just so unbelievably incredible. How do you process this? I mean, you have to do the embalming. There you find another huge mess, as you just showed me in the beginning. These pictures, they are, wow, it's just this, it's a heap of these structures. You say, God damn it. And the government doesn't even acknowledge that this, how do you not go crazy?
Well, my faith in God is what keeps me going. There's a psalm in Psalm 91 where it says, 1,000 may fall at your left, 10,000 at your right hand. We're supposed to trust in God. And basically, in my view, and this was a psalm that I read a lot of times when I was in the military, in the Army. And what it is no matter what's happened, whether it's happening on your left or happening towards your right, you may see devastation over here and even more devastation over there. But we're supposed to focus on God, focus on doing what's right. I can't fix the world. All I can do is do what I feel is the right thing to do and move forward. Strive to do what's right. If somebody doesn't want a vaccine, who cares? If the vaccines are so good and great and you got it, why do you worry if somebody else didn't? We often want to try to make everybody believe or think exact way we do. And the reality is we're all different and none of us think exactly the same. Some people have all kinds of interesting ideas and we're all just trying to make it through this. So I make it through because I know that God is in ultimate control. I believe all of this stuff is spiritual anyway. I don't necessarily think that there's this, you know, uh, this one particular person you can pin all of this evil on, except for Satan himself. And that is a spiritual thing. He has people convinced they're doing the right thing when they're not. Look at Nazi Germany. There's we've all watched things like, what is it? The little girl, the hiding place,
And Frank?
and
Mhm.
Frank. And there's another one that was even more beautiful, Sophia Scholes
Sophie
Sophie
Scholl and
Scholl.
Hans Scholl, who are the
Yes,
siblings.
she was 16 years old. and she was dropping leaflets or whatever, trying to spread awareness and peace, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she gets captured. At 16 years old, she ends up being executed.
And
And what
her
was
brother too. Her
and her
brother was
brother?
older.
And what the quote? And I might get the quote wrong, but one of the things that makes me like, wow, is, and I think it's attributed to her, is she said something like, "I'm going to stand for truth, even if I have to stand alone." That's what we need to do. Stop worrying about the rest of the world. You say that the government, there's nobody up there in the government, but I know that's not true. I know it seems true because you don't hear about it. But there are people in the government that are concerned about this, and they are looking at things. How much they're looking at it, I don't know. All I know is it seems like there's a lot of bureaucracy and corruption and all of these other things. What we've got are people that were in charge that have been, you've seen these things on social media where you find that this person had this job that worked for this agency of the government. Next thing you know, they're here at this, and there's a pyramid. Next thing you know, they're a CEO at Pfizer or they're whatever, and they're all connected together. It is a web, and that web is really, really hard to break because it is really, really thick. And the sad thing is there are people in there, whether they're in it for money, prestige, I don't know what it is that they're in it for. But most of those people, I believe, think that they're doing the right thing. I don't think most of those people are evil, that they are purposely wanting to hurt people. They just believe they're doing the right thing. Well, Nazi Germany happened for, all kinds.
Well,
I
they
can,
had a lot of psychopaths in these camps. I can tell you that. That was not your
that's
average
true.
German. But
But the
then
average
again,
person didn't know.
yeah. But there's something else that Sophie Scholl said. That's a really mm, very moving story. I think she was a little bit older. She was maybe 19. Her brother Hans was maybe 22 or so. But yeah, they were very young. They were at the University of Munich studying there. And then when they were in prison and they were going to be executed, they were guillotined. So the mother had 5 kids. So Hans and Sophie, and then Werner was another brother. He was a soldier in the war, and he was killed in the war. So she actually lost 3 of her 5 children. 2 daughters survived. But I remember reading that she visited, so she was granted like a last visit to her 2 children before they were executed. I mean, it's just horrific thing to contemplate even, right? And so she she talked to Hans, she talked to Sophie, and she was, I mean, she must have been in complete despair and crying. And it was Sophie who had to console her. And Sophie was so young, and the mother was crying. So do you know what Sophie said to her mother?
I'm not sure. I don't remember
Yeah,
this
it's hard
part.
to imagine. What would you say, right? To comfort your own mother. Well, she said to her, look, just these few years, it's just a few years. Why are you crying so much? Isn't that amazing? Because when you look at people today, when you look at people like Peter Thiel or others, they want to live forever. They somehow think it's a great thing to live forever. I mean, being able to die is the salvation of every single one of us. Who wants to live forever? But Sophie said to her, look, these few years, why are you crying about these few years?
Yeah. See, and a lot of people, when they look at stories like her, people will say, I want to be like that girl, that kind of courage, that kind of strength for such a young woman to do what she did. And she, like, even if she gonna stand for truth, even if she has to stand alone, even if it cost her life. Everybody comes out of a superhero movie wanting to be the superhero. The problem with being the superhero, or Sophie, is you become the target from the enemy, and the arrows are thrown towards you, or the guillotine comes for you. And are you going to be strong enough to face death in order to hold on to your principles and your courage. And the truth of the matter is, unfortunately, a lot of people say it, but very few people will actually do it.
Yeah, it's hard to do.
It's sad.
You know, when we talked last, Richard, you told me that your X account was being censored.
Oh yeah,
And
it's
I want to find out a little bit more how that developed over the last 14 months. Has anything changed? Are you being censored less or maybe more?
well, what happened was for the most part, I dropped off and stayed off of social media for a long, long time. And I ended up having a conversation with a doctor, and he thought that the clots had gone away because I wasn't posting anything. And I had to tell him, I said, no, that's not the case. I'm just censored so bad. What's the point? And he said to me, you really need to continue to do this because it's a documentation of what's still happening. And if you don't post anything, is anybody to know? So I really contemplated that, and I made a post, and I hadn't made a post in quite a long time. And that post actually got some traction. It actually went, and it wasn't censored right away. And part of me feels like because I had been off of it for so long, I somehow dropped off of their watch list. But I'm back on it. So it's the pictures. A lot of times they censor the pictures. They didn't censor the pictures for, I think, the first 24 plus hours, maybe 36 hours. So somebody was behind. If I post a picture now, usually it's pretty much boom. It's just automatically, this is, contains sensitive content or whatever they say.
But you can still click on it and see it, correct?
Yeah, but in order to click on it and see it, okay, so I have a friend who does, and you might know her. She works with Tom Haviland too. She has a Substack called
Oh,
Clotastrophe.
Laura Kastner.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. So Laura Kastner, once it gives that, because she doesn't have an X account, she's not allowed to see it.
I didn't
She
know
would have,
that. Oh, you have to have an X account in order to see it. Hmm.
yep.
Mm-hmm.
She had to sign in to. She would have to create an X account to see it.
Yeah. No, definitely. You have to soldier on. You have to soldier on and post these pictures. It's very, very important. Because the great danger is that the new normal, if you're right about the new normal, it's hard for me to imagine because I will never get used to this new normal. And I'm sure there are a lot of other people who feel the same, but I do see that there are people who just do not want to talk about it. They don't want to be remembered of those horrible years. They don't want to hear about the effects that are among us quite visibly so. They want to blend it out completely. And I think that's exactly the wrong response. I think it's very important to keep it alive. To keep it alive until there is real resolution, because it festers. It festers underneath, and there will be more coming. You can already see with the hantavirus and other things that are going on right now. So it's very, very important to keep it alive. But if there are people who get used to this new normal, you can't allow them. You have to rip them off and say, no, this is not normal. It's not normal that we are all sick and decrepit and have huge numbers of fetal deaths and on and on and on. Because people are so flexible. Human beings are so flexible. They get used to all sorts of things. They get used to almost anything and everything. And that's how we survive, right? But it's also how you end up living a life that is not really worth living anymore.
Well, we're getting used to seeing fetal demises at the funeral home. We're getting used to seeing younger people dying of cancers that are rapidly spreading across their body, where some of them you don't even know they had cancer. We're getting used to that. Like my wife said to me a long time ago, it used to shock me when we would see somebody that was in their 30s in the funeral home.
Yeah.
It's not that it never happened. It was just something that was rare. I mean, I've done two of them that I think it's two of them in their 30s in the last month. One of them ended up, leaving behind a young child. We had another one that was 42 in our community, that drop dead at work, which is fascinating. I'm not saying that, people don't sometimes drop dead and things do happen,
Yes.
but it's not a surprise anymore. It's become the new normal. Oh, remember when everybody was watching all the number of the doctors and whatever dying? Where did all that go? It just kind of disappeared. I bet it's still happening. You're just not hearing about it because people don't want to hear about it.
Yeah.
Just like nobody wants to fill out the surveys because they're tired of this.
Yeah. Do you know Ed Dowd's great book? I think it's called Cause Unknown.
Cause unknown.
Yeah. He published that pretty quickly. That's not a while ago that he published it. So
Yep.
on May, just a few days ago, actually, today is
The
27th. Wow. So today's the 27th of May, and I guess then it was just yesterday, May 26th, 2026. The Senate Permanent Subcommittee on Investigations, chaired by Ron Johnson, held a hearing called The Corruption of Science and Federal Health Agencies. And at this hearing, Peter McCullough testified about mRNA shot-related clotting. And so that's a good thing. I'm very happy about it. It's just,
I
yeah.
like Peter McCullough. I met him in Idaho, and a lot of times I do not really seek out interviews, nor I just don't. But he gave a word of advice at the reception after a conference and I was invited to, and he was talking to the whole group, and he's one of the things that I took away from Peter McCullough was he said, many people ask me, what can I do, to help? What can I do, you know? And his answer was that he was willing to talk to people who have a following of 10. His words were, when you're asked to speak, speak. Tom Haviland had been asking me to speak or to be with him in Tennessee. There's a part of me that really didn't feel like I want to go. I was very conflicted on it. I mean, I'm a worker. I'm not somebody who goes to these conferences and stuff. But it's on this topic, and he's done so much hard work, and he's become a really good friend. And I thought of Peter McCullough when you're asked to speak, speak. And so here I go. I'm going to speak. Now it costs money for me to go up there. I got to get a hotel room. I got to waste. There's 3 days that I'm not going to be able to work, and so I don't get paid. I've never been paid to speak anywhere. It just doesn't happen. I don't ask for donations. I don't have GoFundMe's. None of that stuff. If anybody that wants to support me in this way. Share the information with people that you care about. Don't argue about it. Don't fight about it. Don't be so loud that you become annoying. Just speak the truth when you're asked to speak. And if you're an embalmer that's out there and you see somebody like myself speaking up, you could support me by saying, hey, I'm a mortician seeing the same thing. You don't have to be, front and center on the camera or anything like that. But we that speak out, people like people, just try to support each other the best we can. I have to be careful on the number of things that I post because I see like John O'Looney, which I love John O'Looney. He's a great man. And sometimes what I see is they start posting so many different things that they lose focus on what they were there to speak about in the first place. When people go to my page, they're typically going to find pretty much stuff that's going to relate to the issue that I'm concerned about. And that's these abnormal virus findings in the vascular system of the deceased.
Is there anything else is there anything else you want to say that I haven't asked you about?
Um, on one hand, I would like people to not be so afraid. Fear is a bad thing. I've embalmed people that I knew were vaccinated and did not find any abnormal clots. So not everybody who is vaccinated has to be afraid they're going to die. Don't live in fear, but don't think that just because I'm safe, everybody else is safe, because that's not the case. I believe that the spike protein is the culprit. It's the culprit behind the clotting. And the reason why I feel like the vaccine is so dangerous is because it has the mRNA that, when done properly, it's supposed to make your body create the same spike protein that causes abnormal clotting. So yes, I feel like these clots can be happening from the regular virus or spike exposure, but definitely be higher risk for those who have mRNA technology within their body, making their body create the spike protein on its own.
Yeah, and they chose I mean, the remarkable thing is that several companies chose the same, or were told to focus on the spike protein to make the vaccine. Because as a vaccine designer, I once heard a fascinating interview with a vaccine designer, so a person that designs vaccines, and I unfortunately forgot the name of this person. I couldn't find the interview anymore. But he was a real expert. He talked about how you design a vaccine. He said you never take the most toxic protein from a virus, because a virus has many proteins. You can choose which part you take to create your vaccine, right? The vaccine is not just a replica of the whole virus. It's just of a part, and you take the most non-toxic part, because you don't want to get people sick. You just want to immunize them against the disease, if that even works. Who knows? But maybe because you also have all these adjuvants, etc., that are highly toxic. But anyway, the core idea is you take something that is the least toxic part of this virus. You never ever go for the most toxic part. Well, this is just completely that makes complete sense. We would be an idiot to take the most toxic part. So everybody knows that. And he said, then how is it possible that all these companies that came up with vaccines use the spike protein, which is the most toxic part of the of SARS-CoV-2, to build a vaccine around it? It didn't make any sense for him. So it doesn't make sense. So it must have been by design.
I feel that way too. I feel like there was somebody up there that was directing these people to look for this
Yes,
and to
clearly.
develop this based on that.
Yes.
There's somebody up there that's
We've got to find out who that was. We got to find out who is behind it, and we got to put these people into prison. Because if we don't do that, then they're going to put us into prison.
yeah, I mean, I'm 100% with you as far as we need accountability. But the system is so vast and so corrupt, it's hard to put your finger on who is it. Um, I mean, it wasn't Adolf Hitler alone that caused the atrocities in the war. It wasn't Stalin that caused everything. There was a lot of people involved. But we have to stop the bleeding, in any trauma situation. The first thing you got to do, make sure they're still breathing, stop the bleeding. Okay? We have to stop the bleeding. And if we just can agree, and I mean, I don't know how people don't make sense of it. Almost everybody acknowledges the spike protein is the most toxic part of the coronavirus. It has a furin cleavage insert in it, which isn't a part of any other coronavirus, only this one. How did it get there? I don't know. Sounds kind of like gain of function research to me, but whatever. We all can admit, if the spike protein is so toxic, then by God, and how is it that we want our body to create that same spike protein? It just doesn't make sense.
Well, it does if you want to make sure that there aren't as many people around. If you want to get rid of a large
Yeah, but
number of
how
people,
is it that people can't see it?
maybe they don't want to. Plus, a lot
Well,
of people do see it.
oh, they're beginning to see it, but a part of me looks at, again, I'm a spiritual guy, and you know, in the scriptures it says God hands people over to their own delusion. If you don't want to see the truth, okay, believe your lie. And so what? I mean, it's your choice. The problem is when they wanted to try to take rid of our, when they wanted to force us and take away our freedom, our liberty. Why do I have to take your experimental? Remember, it was all experimental. It was always experimental in the beginning. And why did they have to put it on the childhood vaccine schedule? Because they wanted immunity from the harms that were caused. They wanted immunity. And now they got it on there and it's almost impossible to get it off. But I know, because I've spoken to a person from the CDC, I know there are people trying to fix things. Problem is, it's hard to, it's so slow. So slow. So what can we do? Again, stop complying. Just say no. Just say no. What are they going to do? Arrest everybody?
All right. So this person from the CDC, this mysterious person from the CDC, that's a tiny little ray of hope. So let's see what develops from there, if anything. But that's good to know that somebody came. You must have felt a little bit vindicated, at least, or not.
What's strange is it's all a God thing. It's the timing and how it all happened. I mean, I can't even go into quite the detail on how this all conspired because it was all by chance. You know what I'm saying? It'd be one thing for me to come to visit you where you are just for that sole purpose. It'd be something else if we just so happened to be passing through an area at the same time, and then I meet somebody that I know, and they say, "Hey, you need to meet Cornelia Emerald here," and then we just kind of come together that way. That is kind of how this all went down. It was a very informal, um, but when the person realized who I was, he wanted to talk to me about it because he'd heard about it and wanted to know more.
Oh, I see. Okay. Well, I see. I see. So it didn't really come from oh, it was more like a chance encounter that then developed into something. Okay. Well, let's see what else develops from it. Hopefully good things. You must never give up.
Never
You must
give up.
never give up hope. Thank you, Richard.
Thank you.